So I wanted to give you a quick update on the amicus brief that I filed with the state Supreme Court in this State or Ferguson versus Eyman lawsuit. Now, before I do that, as always, I want to remind you to hit subscribe, like, and share this video with others. As I've mentioned before, this channel is heavily shadow banned by big tech, and taking a few seconds to comment, like, subscribe, and share, it actually does help us get the word out. So, back to my amicus brief. Now, first of all, I am happy to report that the Supreme Court actually accepted my amicus brief, which you can actually see right here. It was not certain when I first produced my video on this topic a few weeks ago. However, more has happened since then. One thing unusual about my amicus brief was the fact that I've submitted this amicus brief as an individual, which is very unusual and probably unique in Washington State court history. I'm not absolutely certain of this fact, but I believe it is likely because generally only organizations are allowed to file amicus briefs. And I believe I was able to do this as an individual, by the way, just because I don't expect this to open the floodgates to individuals being able to file amicus briefs in the future, but I believe that rule will still stand. It's just likely that I had a very exceptional position on the law based on my experience and knowledge of Washington State's campaign finance laws, which I made clear in the filing itself and which I've linked to down below. Plus, I expect it might also have an impact of some kind in helping to convince the court to accept review of the Ferguson v. Eyman case after the appellate court allowed this kind of weird Ferguson obsession that a person can be a living, breathing pack. Now, after the court accepted my amicus brief, this kind of forced the AG to respond to my filing. And I've linked the formal response to my amicus in the comment section below, but it was surprisingly weak and limp-wristed. Mainly, Ferguson claimed I was making slippery slope arguments and that I brought up something new, never argued in lower court before. This second attack wasn't true because it had been brought up, but I don't think that it had been properly considered by the lower court at the time, hence the very reason for my amicus brief in the first place. But we will see what the state Supreme Court actually says. Now, however, in addition to Ferguson's kind of annoyance that I filed this amicus brief, Tim Eyman's attorney, former Supreme Court Justice Sanders, also filed his response to my amicus brief. And again, I've linked this down below, but I believe his response is particularly impactful because, unlike Ferguson, he actually provides an exhibit detailing exactly how Ferguson is doing exactly what they pretend that they're not doing to Tim Eyman, by basically trying to force him to report every personal expense for toilet paper and food, etc. Now, the bizarre and the surreal thing about this whole lawsuit has been basically this bizarre and obsessive fixation Ferguson has had on Eyman really for over 10 years now, and how he's personally, endlessly fundraised off this abuse of prosecutorial discretion. I mean, Ferguson literally would use his office to file a new motion and put out a crazy press release attacking Tim Eyman, and then the next day Ferguson would send out a fundraising letter to his donors quoting from his own press release showing how he was attacking Eyman. I mean, Ferguson's donors, of course, they hate Tim Eyman, so they would celebrate the abuse of power Ferguson displayed in his relentless decade-long legal assault, and then Ferguson would raise millions of dollars just off these emails alone. Now, anyway, my amicus brief in this case is really a small bit piece in the kind of larger Ferguson v. Eyman lawsuit drama, but it was something that I could do to have an impact, which is usually impossible in someone else's lawsuit. I do believe the weird, eccentric, and disproportionate nature of this litigation invites far more attention than it has received so far. But Ferguson's threats against attorneys and third-party interveners has helped isolate Eyman from the help that he would normally receive in a situation like this. I'm sort of reminded of the left's kind of crazy overreaction to the Citizens United case, which was a group of people who made a documentary about Hillary Clinton. And Clinton, as usual and habitual for her, wanted to silence those who exposed her corruption. In the end, the Supreme Court ruled that a group of people have free speech rights just like an individual that has basically led to this sudden uproar on the left, repeated mostly by people who never read the original case or understood that anything about it, and they say corporations are not people. Now, in this Ferguson v. Eyman lawsuit, in kind of state court, this is not federal court, the state is essentially trying to say that people can become corporations if they exercise the wrong kind of free speech. And in making this self-serving argument, Ferguson is trying to set a precedent where the state can remove someone's personhood, convert them into a corporation, and then silence them forever with a set of laws, rules, and kind of endless litigation that simply ensures they can't live or function in society any longer. When Ferguson responded to my amicus brief, he basically denies this, of course, claiming that Eyman is a unique individual and is so evil that no other human on earth will be likely to ever fit this category of evil. But this is absurd on its face. Clearly, if the state can invent this category of abuse and apply it to one man, they can do the same to others in the future, maybe even you. Now, I hope that state Supreme Court reviews this case. I hope they do. I hope I was able to make an impact in that direction, as small as my effort might be, but we can only wait and see what they do. This is an unusual case, but I suspect that it's also a good example where, even in little ways, if we can find our opportunity to show up and make an impact, that we actually indeed can make a difference. So I hope this update was kind of helpful for you. Feel free to leave your comments below and then tell me what you think. And remember, the future belongs to those who show up.